the fall of the Empire and the birth of the New Republic, we chart the rise and fall of territories, systems, and the shifting sands of control that defined the galactic struggle. After the Clone Wars ended in 19 BBY, the Galactic Republic was restructured into the First Galactic Empire. Chancellor Palpatine, now Emperor, consolidated his control by turning the Republic's once democratic regions into imperial sectors governed by regional mobs. Gone were the old autonomous zones of the Republic. Instead, sector governors like Wilhelm Tarkin carved out swaths of space into militarized administrative zones. The Tarkin doctrine emphasized fear and control over consensus. The core worlds, such as Coruscant, Quad, and Anaxes, remained the political and economic heart of the Empire. However, it was the Mid-Rim and Outer Rim that bore the brunt of imperial exploitation. These frontier regions were rich in resources but light on loyalty. It was here that the first border tensions began, not between systems but between populations and their occupiers. The Empire projected strength, its borders were far from secure. By 5 BBY, cells of resistance had already begun to appear across the Outer Rim and Mid-Rim. Led by disparate figures like Saw Gerrera, Bail Organa, and Mon Mothma, these cells eventually coalesced into what became the Rebel Alliance to restore the Republic. These cells were nomadic and mobile, rarely holding territory, but their presence began to undermine imperial control, especially in less populated systems. The Empire's reaction was harsh: increased occupation, forced labor, and orbital bombardments. Yet every act of imperial brutality widened the ideological cracks in their borderlands. The destruction of Alderaan in 0 BBY was not just an act of terror, it was a declaration of total war. The Rebel Alliance had struck a decisive blow with the theft of Death Star plans and the destruction of the battle station at Yavin, but it came at a terrible price. The Empire responded by fortifying its borders. Sector governors like Grand Moff Tarkin expanded the over-sector system, grouping rebellious regions into super-sectors under tighter military control. The Outer Rim was essentially cordoned off. Movement between the systems were restricted. Trade routes patrolled. Yet even in this tightening noose, the rebellion thrived. They avoided direct contact of territory but liberated key planets temporarily. Borders were fluid. Systems like Lothal and Ryloth would be freed only to fall again. The rebels had learned the lesson of guerrilla warfare: hold territory and you give the Empire a target. Instead, they focused on destabilizing sectors from within. From 1 ABY to 3 ABY, the Alliance High Command orchestrated several campaigns across the Mid-Rim and Outer Rim, areas where Imperial control was overextended. Mon Cala, one of the earliest systems to fully commit to the rebellion, became a shipyard haven. Its defection marked a major loss for the Empire and a strategic base for rebel forces. The Mid-Rim was the mostly hotly contested theater. Its proximity to the core made it vital. Systems frequently shift allegiance based on rebel victories, propaganda, or imperial retaliation. The border was no longer just a line, it was a dynamic, ever-changing frontier. Some historians call it a lastic war, because the alliance didn't seek to conquer but to inspire insurrection. Even a temporary presence in a system could have long ideological consequences. The rebel defeat on Hoth in 3 ABY seemed like a turning point. The Empire struck hard, scattering the main alliance forces. Yet the opposite occurred. Within the rebel fleet scattered, their movement became decentralized. They established dozens of small bases, harassed imperial convoys, and ignited uprisings. Systems like Bespin, Solus, and even core world sympathizers began to shift their loyalties. Imperial borders, once clear and brutal, began to blur. Loyal governors and mosques became less concerned with ideological loyalty and more focused on survival. By 4 ABY, just before the Battle of Endor, the borders of the Empire were already fracturing under the weight of war and bureaucracy. When the second Death Star was destroyed and Emperor Palpatine was killed at Endor, the galactic map didn't change overnight, but the hearts and minds of entire sectors did. The Battle of Endor was not the end of the war, but it was the end of the Empire's myth of invincibility. Without a strong central command, regional warlords emerged. Fragmentation spread quickly. The Empire's once vast territory fractured into loyalist pockets clinging to power, warlords controlled fiefdoms, systems declaring neutrality or joining the New Republic. The New Republic, born from the ashes of the Alliance, began asserting itself, offering peace, representation, and freedom from imperial tyranny. Between 4 ABY and 7 ABY, the galactic border shifted more than in any period since the foundation of the Old Republic. The imperial core began shrinking. Systems like Chandrila, Corellia, and even Coruscant began experiencing unrest. Former admirals and governors declared themselves rulers of breakaway states. Warlords such as Zin, Ardis Kane, and Truden Teradok carved up large portions of the Outer Rim. The new republic, now headquartered on Tendrila and later Coruscant, became a policy of liberation. The strategy was not total conquest but incremental legitimacy. Planets were offered a choice: join the new republic and restore your Senate voice, or remain under the chaotic rule of warlords. By 6 ABY, nearly half the galaxy had joined the new republic. In 5 ABY, the new republic launched a bold campaign to liberate Coruscant, the political heart of the galaxy. The battle was long and brutal, but the psychological blow was devastating. With Coruscant captured, the new republic claimed legitimacy as the new galactic government. The core worlds, always more political than militaristic, began defecting in waves. The war had become less about who held which planet militarily and about who could offer peace, stability, and a future. The final blow came in 7 ABY, when the Imperial remnants, led by Grand Vizier Masamedis, signed the Galactic Concordance, a peace treaty with the new republic. The Empire was formally dissolved. All remaining borders held by the Imperial military were ceded or demilitarized. Not all Imperials accepted defeat. A secret remnant, known as the Final Order, would later flee to the unknown regions, an ominous shadow on the edge of the galactic map. The Galactic Civil War reshaped the stars, not just politically, but culturally, ideologically, and economically. Whole generations were raised in war zones. Border worlds, especially in the Midrim, still carried the scars of rapid regime change. The new republic attempted to decentralize power to avoid the authoritarianism of the empire, but that decentralization led to its own instability in the decades to come. But for a time, the galaxy knew peace, however fragile, and it all began with a war not for territory but for freedom. In the end, the Galactic Civil War was not just a clash of fleets or ideologies, it was a battle for the very shape of civilization. Borders in a galaxy far, far away were never permanent. They were drawn to stardust and rewritten in the wills of those who dared to resist.